Hey everyone, welcome to Dalton Draws, a series where the title tells you exactly what the show is. This is part of a 5-episode series for Super Smash Bros. Each episode will cover characters introduced in a different game in the series. This week's episode focuses on the original 12 fighters from the first game. To start, let's look at this poster. I didn't end up recording the process of sketching it out, but it took about 3 hours or so of looking at the Smash Bros. Website and making super rough sketches of each character. I should note that this was drawn on August 8th, so it was before the final characters were revealed. I also obviously can't account for DLC characters yet, aside from Piranha Plant. From there, I took each character out of the poster and into separate files to redraw them. Each character is both part of the poster and a separate illustration. If you want to keep up with these drawings as they're released, follow me on Twitter. I also release some of these early on Patreon in the weekly updates, available to all patrons. For working on these sketches, I'd find the full character renders and use them as reference for the more detailed characters, while for simpler characters, I'd draw them mostly from memory and make corrections in the final version. Each character sketch took about 10 minutes at most. After everyone from the 64 roster was sketched, I started drawing the full versions. I usually recorded in sessions of about 3 to 4 characters at a time. First up is, of course, Mario. I didn't use any reference for him in the sketch, but I did use reference to get the colors right. The Smash Bros. Version of Mario has a bit of a darker color palette than in the proper Mario games. In the games, Mario is one of my go-to characters. He's basic, but he's fun to use. I especially liked using customs in Smash 4 to max out his speed stat, so he'd jump absurdly high. That made for some chaotic matches. I've never played much of DK in the Smash Bros. Games. I loved the Donkey Kong Country games, and I liked DK as a character. His playstyles never really clicked with me. The most I've really used him was for some of those challenges in Melee and Brawl where you had to survive for like 15 minutes in the multi-man battles. Link was definitely the most time-consuming of the original 12 to draw. His design from Breath of the Wild has a lot more to it than your typical Link design. It's one of my favorites, but it also meant more work for me. In addition to using a Smash Bros. Render for reference, I also had to use some screenshots from Breath of the Wild. I don't play as Link a ton in Smash Bros. Mostly just used him in 64 and Melee, since I liked his Ocarina of Time design. If I want to play Link, usually I'll stick with Toon Link, but who knows, maybe that'll change with Ultimate. Speaking of characters I don't play much, here's Samus. Gonna get a little controversial here and say, I don't really care about the Metroid series. It just doesn't interest me. I won't deny that they're great games, just not for me. I do wish Ultimate had used Samus's design from Samus Returns though. That one looked really cool. I should note that I'm not drawing Dark Samus in this video. Echo Fighters will be waiting for the final episode, since they're making up a large portion of Smash Ultimate's newcomers. With Yoshi, I ended up changing the pose pretty drastically. The original fit a bit more with his portrayal in art for Yoshi's Island, but he's usually more energetic than that. Yoshi isn't one of my mains, but he is one of my favorite Mario characters. Similar to Mario himself, one of my favorite ways to play him was with customs in Smash 4. He had a variation of his tongue attack where the egg would get launched sideways, and it was always hilarious to get a KO with that. Kirby was probably the fastest character to draw, unsurprisingly. He's simple, but it's always fun to draw him. I don't play his games, but I love the visual design of the series. Fox was interesting to draw. I haven't been a big fan of his design post-Melee. It's interesting to think about how his design might be way different nowadays if Star Fox Command hadn't come out. That design ended up being the basis for Brawl in Smash 4, and it also seems like the one that most influenced Star Fox Zero as well. If Command hadn't come out at that time, it's likely his Brawl design would have been based on Star Fox Assault instead, and chances are that would be the design that carried on to this day. In terms of actual gameplay, Fox has always been one of my favorites. I just wish they'd bring back Sector Z as a stage. I've always preferred it to Corneria. Pikachu was fun to draw, but remember how I mentioned that I didn't use reference for the simpler characters? That came back to bite me a bit here. I pulled up reference for the final version to make the face a bit more accurate, and realized that the pose was actually pretty similar to the official render. Typically I've been trying to avoid that, so I ended up changing the pose a bit. I've never played much with Pikachu in Smash Bros, but I'll always associate the character with spamming Thunder Shock and Thunder in Smash 64. Ah, the king of second bananas. I love playing as Luigi in Super Smash Bros. He's just so bizarre, and I love how with every game they've made him and Mario more and more distinct from each other. Outside of Smash, he's one of my favorite Mario characters. It's just such a shame he so tragically died in the August 8th Direct and won't be returning for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I haven't played Earthbound, but Ness has always been one of my favorite characters in Smash Bros. I remember as a kid I had so much trouble trying to unlock him. I didn't even know it was possible until I checked out this one Pokemon-themed tip book at the school library. It has a section about how to unlock everyone in Super Smash Bros. I remember finally unlocking him at a neighbor's house and then going home right after to try and unlock him in my own copy of the game. And now for arguably someone more representative of Smash Bros. At this point than his own series, Captain Falcon. One of my absolute favorite characters to play as, ever since Smash 64. He's fast, he's powerful, he's just awesome. And that's not even counting the Falcon Punch. He's not my main, but he's definitely up there. And then there's Jigglypuff to round out this roster. Pun intended. And once Jigglypuff was finished, we reached the final step for this video. Taking those 12 completed fighters and putting them in the poster. Some of the placements had to be adjusted, and that'll be the case throughout this series. I'm still not decided on where to place Echo Fighters in the final version, but I'm thinking of just sorting everyone out by the game they were introduced in and leaving it at that. And with that, part 1 is complete. Tune in next time for part 2. If you want to see the characters as they're drawn, follow me on Twitter. And if you want to support the content I create and help me to continue with it, you can support this channel on Patreon. All content on there is available for anyone pledging even $1 a month. Thanks for watching. Later.